Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of MedHeads, MedCityNews.com's loosely contrived and oddly executed weekly summary of the news that has been in the week in business of healthcare. I am Chris Sepper. I run MedCityNews.com, and I'm joined by a squadron of MedCity News journalists. We have joining us in Cleveland, Ohio, along with me is Nicole Oran. Nicole, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. In the city of Big Shoulders, he writes about health IT. It's Neil Versell. Neil, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Chris.
Great. And covering early stage life science innovation, she's based in San Diego. It is Megan Akashivan. Megan, how you doing?
Dandy.
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 So lots of people on this weekend. We might be joined. We've been tweeting out and encouraging Jonathan Bush to call us and contact us. Jonathan, you know our number. Because of the big news of the day and the week, which was the DoD's decision to hand over its EMR management to a group of companies. The main contractor was Leidos, Neil, but Cerner is the big winner out of the EMR vendors, and I'd love to give everybody a rundown of what's been happening and what's next.
Sure. Well, this was something that had been, it was kind of a surprise that the Cerner, Leidos, and Accenture federal team got the contract, because everybody I talked to for months had been saying that Epic and IBM were shoo-ins to win this thing. It makes sense when you think about that, in that Epic has managed the largest private sector EHR implementation in the country, namely Kaiser Permanente, and apparently done it pretty well for several years. The VA, the military health system, is slightly larger than Kaiser all put together, and Kaiser operates in nine different regions, whereas the military health system is kind of this big conglomeration. There's some regional management, but it's really going to be one central record system that will be accessible. I think it's like 52 U.S. military hospitals around the world, and lots and lots of clinics, including field hospitals, field clinics set up in battle zones where troops are deployed. The contract came in at about $9 billion. Actually, the initial phase is $4.3 billion, but the total value over 10 years could be about $9 billion, according to the Department of Defense, which is below their previous estimate of about $11 billion, and maybe that's where people thought Epic was going to win. It appears to me, without having actually read the bids in full myself, that the Cerner team may have underbid Epic by $2 billion, which may be one reason why they got it. So it's definitely a big deal, because the military health system does serve, I believe is it 8.5 million active duty service members and their dependents. That's a pretty large system compared to, or is it might be 9.5 million compared to the 8 million or so in Kaiser.
Okay, but I mean, to me, the big things that seem to affect the business side is, A, Cerner wins this contract. Cerner did about I think it was just over $3 billion in 2014, and I'm struggling to look at what Epic. I mean, Epic was much larger than that.
Epic's privately held, so we don't know for sure.
But I gotta believe that they were bigger. But this really balances some of the scales when it comes to, EMR companies in the space. Yeah. But what is it going to mean for interoperability, and what is it going to mean for competition and the way that EMRs can deal with each other and compete with each other?
Yeah, well, that's been the $9 billion question all along. Is what about interoperability? There was a lot of criticism that the three finalists, and the other bidding group included Allscripts, the three finalists all rely on legacy client-server technology that is, a lot of people consider obsolete and/or clunky and hard to integrate and hard to scale. Cerner has a better reputation than Epic as far as interoperability goes. Epic likes to sort of run the whole thing in in a geographic area or within a health system. They want to be end-to-end, have everything, although they don't have some of the ancillary department systems that they do have to interface with. And Cerner's been talking a good interoperability game for the last couple of years in terms of offering APIs, but only to their customers and not to competitors. They have been talking that game, but it's generally believed that Cerner is a little bit easier in the interoperability arena. It's a little easier to work with. Still, a lot of people think that it's that they're all bloated systems and overpriced systems. And I see you reaching for your prop there. Are you gonna go for that now?
Let me ask this. Let me ask this. Mm-hmm. Way to blow the lead. Way to blow.
I didn't give it away yet.
Does it? I mean, when you go to HIMSS, everybody's like, it's Epic and everybody else. I mean, is this such a big deal that it's not really Epic and everybody else anymore? Is it Epic and Cerner and everybody else? And does that? Will that trickle down? Will that trickle down into more competition when it comes to individual health systems?
That's a good question. I mean, we know GE is getting out of the hospital business. I think there's going to continue to be consolidation. There may be another big deal coming down. I don't have any information that I'm privy to, but I think it's going to have to be more consolidation. But really, in the last few years, it has been Epic, Cerner, and everybody else.
So I have a question, Neil, actually. So a story that I wrote earlier this week that was based off of a white paper that came from the Health IT Institute, or something like that, I'm sorry. An article I wrote earlier this week was talking about interoperability and how that is really key in pushing precision medicine and genomics further. And what it was saying is that with all of these EHRs, it's that like Epic and Cerner and all these things are just like kind of butting heads. So do you think that it's more? So you think it's more of a push towards consolidation than just allowing more open compatibility? Like these disparate elements are not going to just say, hey, we're going to work together. It's just going to be that it's going to be one big conglomerate, EHR, or a couple different conglomerates.
I don't think we're quite getting to that. I mean, there's still a lot of probably hundreds of ambulatory EHR vendors and probably dozens of specialty EHR vendors, serving, say, pharmacy systems, labs, and some that serve, say, just the ED, or some that just serve pediatrics, etc. Things that are more specialized. And pediatrics pediatrics
is it used for these niche EHRs? I mean, do you think that that's a good? So these niche EHRs, is that a good thing, or is that?
It's probably a good thing. It probably is a good thing. They might be easier to use, but there are standards. I guess they haven't really. Everybody seems to have a little exception to the standards, though, and that's one of the things that's being debated quite a bit as CMS works on the Stage 3 meaningful use rules, is what standards to use. One that's been talked about a lot is FHIR, the Fast Health Interoperability Resource, which is an HL7 standard. The thing about that is it's not final yet. It's still kind of in beta form. And the other thing that's been talked a lot about for Stage 3 is relying more on APIs than on one-to-one interfaces between competing systems.
Okay.
There are a lot of issues that need to be resolved. And the big question with the DoD deal is it still isn't going to, in its current form and the way the contract is written, it still isn't going to guarantee that the DoD system is interoperable with the VA system, which has been a problem, I believe, going back to the Clinton administration. There have been promises to make those two systems interoperable.
Well, let's look a little bit beyond. Let's look beyond the issue of those two systems.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for our audience, I think in the end, the biggest conversation has been about patient empowerment, health data revolution. Right. If you were to say which is this, of all the different combinations you could have gotten in getting this DoD deal, which one was the win for the health data with the data revolution and for the idea of giving patients more control of their records?
I don't know if there was. I mean, we don't know yet until we see the implementation.
Yeah.
The DoD now the blue button, which is something that's been championed by the data liberation people, came out of the VA, and has been adopted by other federal agencies, including the DoD. And it's been used pretty widely among VA patients. I don't really know to what extent it's been used in the military health system, but that's one way of patient empowerment. And patient empowerment is more than just the technology; it's part of the culture as well. In any healthcare institution, they have to be willing to give up the data and share it with patients.
Well, on the plus side, right? Epic is not a member of the new. There was a new health IT EMR.
Commonwealth, the Commonwealth, right.
So at least Cerner's a part of that, and that's some kind of plus. But this was not a big.
Although I'm not sure what Commonwealth has really accomplished at this point. I mean, they're testing their system. A lot of people view it as just a way to prevent Epic from cornering the market. Now, I guess that Cerner has won this contract. I don't think Epic will corner the market. They've cornered the market in some regions, though.
Yeah.
But I think it was a way to gang up on Epic in some ways.
Does this kick dirt on Athena Health?
I don't think so. I know that they were a little bit upset. They wanted something cloud-based. I don't know if it kicks dirt on Athena Health. Athena Health is just getting into the hospital market with a couple of recent purchases too, so they weren't quite ready to. They didn't bid on this contract. They did not have the capability to handle it when the contract.
Yeah, they just hated on it.
They just hated on it, but they hated on the idea that it was client server and not cloud-based and more interoperable and something more modern than building on mumps, which is technology that goes back to the late 70s.
So, Neil, give us the how we know this. When will we know, and what happens with this with this agreement that we can tell it's a good thing for people who want to innovate in healthcare and people who want to and people are looking to access data and leverage EMRs in a way that they actually can be maximized. I mean, like I said, it's a ton of money, so it tips the scales. Yeah. What will we be seeing in this deal that makes it that?
Okay, well, we might not know for at least 2 years, because the initial term of the contract is 2 years. That's where the $4.3 billion figure comes from, and that's the only figure that was set in the award. It is renewable, though, for up to 10 years. It can be renewed 3 times, a total of 10 years, I believe. We probably won't know until we see the first pilot installation, and I believe it's being managed out at a naval base in San Diego. Though I heard that the first test installation is going to be in Washington State, actually. So, we may know in a few months when they start implementing that. It may be worth trying to talk to some people up there at that base. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But
Keshavan, get out there.
Yeah.
No, for the San Diego trial.
Yeah.
That was a joke. Anyway. Well, Neil, thanks. You gave a good rundown of that, and I appreciate it. It's one of many things that we're going to talk about today, and I want to turn the talk over to Megan, a piece you did this week, where you kind of drilled down into the whole idea of cancer pricing and the idea of whether funneling money really into a cure is all hype, or if it really matters if it's all hype.
Yeah. So there's been. There's been a bit of a debate going on, and it's around whether we as the media are being too skeptical about the future promise of cancer care. People are saying that in 10 years we're going to have a cure for cancer, just broadly cancer, not like a cure for melanoma or a cure for this and that. It's just that with our advances in next-gen sequencing and with all the the diagnostics that are coming out of that, and the way that we can now precisely create targeted therapies, like there are a lot of really big names that are really optimistic about turning either curing cancer or turning it into a chronic disease like diabetes that you just manage but you live. Even Jay Flatley, the CEO of Illumina, has told me many times that this is what he believes. But then at the same time, the media must be it must scrutinize everything. Like we are the fourth pillar or whatever the hell. So there's been some pushback on whether there's veracity to this whole idea that cancer can be cured. So it's now forming a bit of a debate around whether the skepticism is kind of a bad thing, because the thing is that to move us towards a cure for cancer, there needs to be an enormous collaborative effort that has to happen. A lot of money needs to go into it, a lot of data from a bunch of different patients, just to understand the overall spectrum of what we're looking at, because it's so complicated. But now we're getting to a point where we have tools. So the thing is that if you're overly, the idea that people are arguing, and I kind of buy into it, is that if you're overly skeptical about it, then patients might be skeptical about it. They might think, I don't have a chance, maybe I won't participate in this clinical trial. Maybe I don't have hope. And then with that, so some people are saying that, it's better to be optimistic about and say that we can have a cure because we have the tools. At the same time, everything is just really, really, really expensive. So some of the skepticism is helping temper the expectations out of these wildly expensive drugs.
Well, like you said, the stake is really about research money, right? Because if you say, all right, we're going to find a cure for cancer, well, then the research money falls that way. And then if you say, well, look, it's really not about finding a cure. It's about, managing disease, right? It's about patient comfort. It's about all these other things. Well, then the research money goes there. So, of course, the Illumina guy is going to be all for curing cancer.
Absolutely.
Because his stock price rolling, right?
Exactly.
But so you don't just have journalists asking and questioning whether there's going to be a cure. You have legit researchers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have legit researchers. What was I going to say? Oh, and then this kind of just feeds into the whole argument over whether cancer drugs are too expensive, because we've got these therapies that are running $300,000 a course. That's crazy. I mean, it's just really, really high. And so, what does that face, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they are expensive, right? I mean, people are getting what they pay for, right? They get life, and maybe I'm infected more than probably by even the broader debate on a new round of expensive drugs, because I'm actually buying when people put out the $1,000 pill or the $58,000 pill that those pills are actually worth it. So I'm kind of sprawling out of cancer here into other conversations, because those are actually delivering real cures. Like
Sovaldi for hepatitis C, that's what, $78,000 a year or something like that, and it's curative. So of course there's benefit to it. And I mean, the pharma companies that are sort of reviled for charging so much money, they're also saying that we're using this money to feed it back into more research so that we can push this engine further, so that in those 10 years we can get those curative therapies. So it's you are paying for tomorrow, not so much as your life today, but it also adds to the broader picture of things, is what people are saying on that end of it. But Well,
what do you think? I mean, do you buy the cure for cancer, or do you buy the other argument that sure, there might be a cure for cancer, but it's not worth pumping the research in now. It's too far away, and that you can go about really treating patients in another approach.
This job has been really interesting because I've grown my skepticism towards the current capacity of certain drugs, but there are just so many different interesting platforms that have opened up, and I think that in the not so distant future we're going to get some really, really groundbreaking stuff that's coming out. So I think that 10 years, I don't know if it's 10 years or 20 years or whatever, but I think that there is potential.
But the money statement I thought from your story was that drugs account for 40% of the cost.
Yeah.
Right? So there's another 60% of the cost that could be affected by innovation and changes in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. This is true too, but as far as I'm aware, I don't know. I think cancer, it's these potential therapeutic agents, unless they're attached to some kind of a biologic. I think that the real innovation is coming in the drugs, more so than the surgeries and the radiations and things like that. So I don't know. But it was interesting because the doctor did say that we are looking, when it comes to cancer drug costs, we're not looking at an accurate picture. We're just focusing in on how expensive these drugs are, and we're not looking at the overall care picture and how much that costs and what that means to a person's life and maybe like a $300,000 therapy for a 97-year-old won't matter as much to him or her as it would to a 20-year-old. And so, there are just so many disparate, like, unmeasurable ways to gauge what a therapy means to a patient, that it's also hard to just say it's just that the cancer drugs are too expensive. So there's a lot of commentary going on around, basically, on what the immediate future is, what the next 10 years are going to be, what the benefit of these really targeted expensive therapies are. I don't know. We're in an interesting time. There are a lot of turns that we can take, and I think some of them, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type approach. Like, I think some of the doors could lead you to, a broadly curative world of medicine, and some of them won't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of, we're a sticker shock nation, right? I mean, if people wanted to mask it, all you'd have to do is say, all right, you only pay like, you can pay twice as much, but if we space it out over 30 years, you're going to be fine with it. I mean, I think that's the problem with all the conversations around cancer drug costs, is everybody sees these one-time fees, and they don't, at least the consumer side of it, they see these, oh my gosh, this one pill costs $58,000. Yes, but that pill cures you, right? And I would rather just grind it out and pay 3 times that amount over the course of a lifetime. Absolutely. That's video game nation, right? That's exactly. I mean, and it is. I mean, think about how consumers look at paying for things today, and I think that's the outside conversation that affects this culture is. Let's use video games, right? Used to be you go down, you buy your Xbox disc, you buy it for X amount of money, and that would be it, right? But now in the modern world, you get that game for free, and then you pay as you go, and you wind up paying 3 to 5 to 15 to 20 times more. The country has said that is a preferable way to pay for things, even if they wind up paying more.
That's such a
because
good
some
analogy.
people will pay less, and some people will pay more. And I don't know how we apply that into medicine when we talk about drug costs.
Well, and then it's just also, as far as drug efficacy goes, people are looking at it the wrong way also, is what this oncologist I talked to was saying, because you might look at a new really expensive drug that'll prolong life on average 3 to 6 months. But a way to do that better is to say, for 10% of the people it'll prolong the life 5 years, for 20% it'll do it for 4 years. It's like we're working in averages right now because it's easier to look at single numbers as opposed to like a more nuanced approach to it. Because if you look at, the fact that you could have a 10% chance of living the rest of your life or getting cured, like, that's a totally different way of saying something than saying, on average, this will extend your life 3 to 6 months. Also, we are getting way better with all this precision medicine stuff. Like, we just are. And so maybe for today's patient that won't apply, but that same drug that has been developed and is wildly expensive could, once we understand what the molecular behaviors of an individual patient are, like, we will know if it will help them live the rest of their life, So it's a lot more nuanced than these big headlines that are out there that are saying, cancer drugs are too expensive. It's just, there's more to it, is what I've been hearing and saying. And it's funny, I already got a little pushback on some of the stuff I wrote this week, just because apparently my view is a little too naive and optimistic or something. But I think that I know what I'm talking about to some degree, at least. So
I hope so. I really, really hope so. Well, let's switch from obviously we're hoping to extend the lives of people in the population. And Nicole, you wrote about the latest predictions around the world population. And so why don't you give us a rundown of that, because it goes straight to some of the things that we deal with week in and week out.
Yeah, so United Nations report came out just a couple days ago, but it's basically showing that the numbers of how the world population growth is going to look like is pretty staggering in terms of just the sheer numbers. I mean, right now the population is 7.3 billion people, and they're predicting that by the year 2100 that it'll be 11.2 billion, and even just by 2030. We'll go up more than 1 billion people from right now. And so they're kind of citing some different reasons for this, which include the fact that life expectancy is just higher now. So right now it's about 70 years old, and by the time it gets to 2100 it'll be closer to 83 years old. So that's a pretty big jump. I mean, it's a good amount of time, but still that's That's a pretty big jump. And then also the fertility rate. So we're in countries where the population is growing the most, the fertility rates are higher. So that's a big contributing factor, especially in African countries. And then also just, the aging population. So right now, there's only about 1 billion people who are over the age of 60. And by 2100, they're thinking it's going to be closer to 3.2 billion. So just people are living longer, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of the global population moving forward, for sure.
Boy, in my research for my articles this week, one debate that some people legitimately seem to think is that we shouldn't treat cancer because it's a population control. So that's kind of messed up, but we are expanding.
I know. That's what I mean, with this story, it's kind of interesting. It's like there's pluses and minuses. People are living longer, and all of that, but what does that really mean in terms of the world as a whole? So I don't know. There's differing opinions on this subject, I think, for sure.
We're getting deep.
Yeah.
Well, but it also calls for better population health management. I think that's the biggest thing that's going on, is that we have an opportunity now to try and manage big populations with data. But the challenge, I think, is obviously there's often a if you're in a poor nation, how is that technology going to help us? And how is not just from an app standpoint, but I mean talking about diagnostics and other things. How well is the international effort to bring cutting-edge technologies to those markets? And are there any good examples of that?
I mean, I think that some of these pharma companies are, expanding into Africa and stuff with like really cool digital health tools, telemedicine, and things like that to at least expand care. And then, they're definitely making some efforts into tracking that data. So there's some effort being made. It's not on par with like what's going on in the U.S. That's pretty clear, but.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that I think we outlined some of the biggest issues and challenges this week. I mean, we just talked about, obviously we're going to the big headline is that the DoD has picked Cerner and the coalition around them. Obviously but the debate on its effectiveness is going to come down the pike, and the same things we just talked about: a bigger population, increased population growth, and a bigger debate on how to deliver therapies that are going to be cost effective, even if those prices are maybe not growing, but they're shifting, and that seems to be the challenges this week. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining us this week on MedHeads, as you do every week. For Neil Vercel, for Megan Akeshevan, and for Nicole Oran, I'm Chris Sepper. I hope you have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.